10:30. In the absence of a chairman and vice chairman, can I call for nominations of chairman of this meeting?
Good morning, members. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our external auditors, PwC, who are in attendance this morning. Welcome to the Audit and Risk Management Committee of Thursday, 24th September at 10:30. This is the meeting of the Audit and Risk where we consider the external auditors' report on their work to certify the Council annual accounts for 2014 and also the pension fund accounts. I wonder if I could ask Lucy if we could have the Sederunt, and apologies, please.
We have 5 members present, and I have apologies from Councillor Dykes, Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Prentice. Councillor Scobie and Councillor Stitt are not present but may be along later. And Councillor Wood.
Apologies in for Councillor Stitt.
Thank you. Just getting back to the agenda, any declarations of interest? No, thank you. The minute of the meeting of 18th of June, I've been advised of a couple of issues within that. The minute of the meeting of 18th of June, item 4, local scrutiny plan, the Chief Social Work Officer will attend the December meeting of the committee on the subject requested in 4.2. Item 5, the annual complaints report. A report for on the options for members to raise inquiries will come to the December meeting of the committee. And 5.3, item 7, internal audit reports. A communication to all elected members on security of information has been prepared and is expected to be issued shortly.
If you didn't mind, Chair, I'd like to raise concerns about this personal and sensitive information circulated within the members. To me, it used to be the case that that sort of information was always handed back after committee. It never got outside the building. And I've got concerns that a reminder hasn't been sent out yet after, this is the 18th of June, that a meeting was held and it's still not been sent out. And I feel that's a long time for such a sensitive piece of work to have been done, but I've still got concerns that people can take that information outside the building, and I don't know whether it's, in my view, I don't think it's necessary and it shouldn't be allowed. And I did hear good reasons as to why people want to take it away from this building.
I think on a couple of occasions there has been members who have been taking, confidential reports out of the committee room, understanding that it is confidential, but also believe understanding that can be done, as long as that member keeps it confidential. But I understand what you're saying about taking a long time to get that information out. But it has been, if we can agree those extracts into the minutes, that would be the minutes agreed. If that's okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 4, then we move to the external auditor's report. It's pleasing to note that we have another unqualified opinion this year, and we're grateful to Paul and his team for maintaining good standards of accountancy. I invited Lindsay Patterson of PwC to take us through the report. If you've got anything to add to that.
Thank you very much. I'll take you through the report and just flag some of the highlights from the report. If I start on the covering letter that's on page 9 of your paper. Sorry, I couldn't find my page numbers there. And that simply sets out the purpose of the report, which is to summarise the outcome of our audit for the year. In 3 bullets, 3/4 of the way down that page, we've flagged some outstanding points. They have now all been completed, so we are in a position to sign the accounts today. If I move into the next page, page 11, we flag the framework for our audit, which is international standards of auditing, as well as the need to comply with Audit Scotland's Code of Audit Practice. We also set out here management responsibility and our responsibility as your auditors. As has already been said, we will be issuing an unqualified audit opinion on the financial statements. However, it does include an explanatory paragraph in relation to the road statutory trading operation because it hasn't achieved a break-even position over a cumulative 3-year period. But that doesn't represent a qualification to the audit opinion in any respect. Moving into the following page, we flagged here the draft financial statements and the supporting working papers were of a good standard, and we'd like to thank Paul and the rest of his team for all the cooperation that we received throughout the audit process. On page 14 to 15, we set out here the work that we did in response to the significant risks and elevated risks that we presented to you in our audit plan that came to the committee in March. We've had no reason to change those key areas of focus, and as we've set out here, the outcome of the work that we've undertaken and the outcome. Key things to flag from that work is in relation to DG1, where we agreed with management the need to have a further impairment of the carrying value of the leisure centre in light of new information which came to light during 2014-15. We have deliberately not included any financial details within this report, given the sensitivity of negotiations with the contractor in this regard. And that's something that we agreed with management that we would not do. We also looked at revenue and expenditure transactions and testing journal entries to be comfortable that was fairly stated. We looked at the equal pay claims. Again, that had been flagged as an elevated risk. And again, our work flagged from that we felt the equal pay claim at the end of the year was overstated given the position that the council was in. So we agreed with management that that provision would be reduced. On the next few pages, we flag up some other areas. We highlight our materiality, which again was updated from that was reflected in the audit plan, and that just reflects the actual results for the year. Moving on into for page 17 of the document, we've highlighted there some analysis of journals. This is something that's new for this year for PwC. We've got greater data analytical techniques. On their own, they don't necessarily say a great deal, if I'm honest, but I think next year when we'll be able to provide comparative data, then that might show some interesting statistics for you. In terms of significant audit adjustments, I've referred to the only 2 adjustments that were made, and there were no other adjustments that were made by management or indeed adjustments which remained unprocessed. On page 18, we set out some of the areas of focus. DG1 impairment I've already covered, as equal pay also. We also looked at the way in which property had been revalued during the course of the year, looking at the work that had been undertaken by the council's in-house team, but also using PwC's valuations team to understand the assumptions and logic that has been applied, and we had no concerns to raise in that regard. The local government pension scheme clearly represents a big liability on your balance sheet, and that's very much driven by the underpinning assumptions. So each year we will look at the assumptions that have been used by your actuary, and on page 20 of the document, we set out the assumptions that you've used in your pension scheme and compared those to our expected range of values. And again, we had no concerns to raise with that. Another area that we looked at was around the open cast mining, where you've had a grant received in advance in your balance sheet for the last couple of years. Again, we had no concerns with that, and that there was no requirement to make a further provision in connection with that. Each year, we're required to consider related parties and how they have been recorded by the council in the financial statements. And we need to understand the systems that are involved, both from a member's point of view, but also from a management team's point of view. And we're satisfied that the related party listing provided to us was complete, and that there was nothing else that we need to review. The annual governance statement, again, is something else we have to review, and we're comfortable that it's consistent with the knowledge we have of the council, and we have no matters to raise in that regard. If I move over a couple of pages, Dunmuir Park is mentioned on page 22, but that's subject to a separate report which comes later on the agenda. Section 3 onwards is really where we start to provide some information that is largely targeted at Audit Scotland, if I'm honest, where they want to gather information about the council, and they'll use some of this information to inform its local government overview report that will be produced probably in the new year. And so what we're seeing here is just some of the financial challenges that the council has faced during the year in terms of the level of savings that was required to be achieved, and just how the finances of the council are sitting. We've also highlighted on page 27 some of your key capital projects and the capital expenditure during the year and how that has been funded. Looking forward, on page 28 of the document, we flag here the level of savings that are going to be required over the up and coming periods, and flagging that there's cumulative savings of just over 32 million will be required to enable the council to balance its budget. And that clearly is a challenging figure, and will be an area that is already subject to much management focus and attention going forward. Health and social care integration is clearly an area of focus throughout the sector, and we have undertaken an initial piece of work jointly with the NHS board to look at the way in which the governance has been established, and also to look at the establishment of the underlying budget. The report is in draft form with management for both the council and the health board, and once that's finalised, I understand it will go to an early meeting of the integrated joint board. Best value and performance, we have flagged up here some of the performance reporting that the council does on a routine basis, and also on page 31 flagged up the work that we did in relation to the statutory performance information that the council collects. And other than recommending that more feedback be sought from the community regarding format and content of performance reporting, we were very comfortable with the arrangements you have in place for that. Again, in the tail end of last year, there had been a joint inspection for services for children, young people and families, which resulted in the need for an action plan and some improvement areas. And we've just followed up that work is continuing. So this is simply here for information. Again, if I move on to page 35, which is section 5 of our report, where we talk about governance and internal control, there were no significant control deficiencies that we need to bring to your attention as a result of the audit. And we're comfortable that the arrangements in place that you are appropriate. We also comment on page 36 on internal audit, again, flagging the reliance that we place on the work of internal audit, particularly in relation to grant claims, and consider that the internal audit function is appropriate for the council's needs. In the section 6 on fraud, we set out the respective responsibilities of auditors, management and the Audit and Risk Committee, and flag the outcome of our work on NFI. I think here there is some action that's needed by the council just to maintain that focus on the NFI process and to ensure that is appropriately dealt with going forward. In section 7, independence, I need to confirm that I am independent of the council and that I'm able to sign the financial statements. We've flagged here the work that we've done in health and social care integration. We don't believe it represents a threat to our independence, and we also sought approval from Audit Scotland before undertaking the work, again, just to confirm that there was no independence issues. That was everything that I planned to say in the context of the report, but very happy to take any questions. Thanks
very much for that, Lindsay. Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
Nothing really, just to answer questions. Thanks, Chair. Other than to say that the actions that are reflected in the action plan will come back to this committee and provide monitoring reports on those during the course of the next financial year.
My understanding is that both Chair and Vice Chair has been in discussion with you and they're in agreement with that particular thing. Okay, thank you. Members? Willie?
Let's hope somebody else is coming in there, Chair. However, I'll refrain, Chair, from making any comment on the slipway boat hoist, as that is an issue that is lying with the Audit Scotland by way of a complaint made by myself and Councillor Foster. However, I will make comment. Page 18, under the equal pay provision and contingent liability, and in the contextual part, it says here that in the first part, the first statement already included a provision for equal pay amounting to 3.5 million. The purpose of the provision is to cover the expected cost of claims for compensation under Equal Pay Act 1970. And then it goes on to say in the penultimate paragraph of that page, as part of the audit, we have considered whether this provision continues to be required, given the fact that a settlement has been reached, which is fine. I fully appreciate and understand that. That's where the trade union. It goes on to say we understand that as of the 31st of March 2015, 10 cases remain outstanding, and that the legal department considers the likely settlement to amount to circa £0.5 million. I think we've got two lawyers, or at least two lawyers, in the room today, and the expertise of Audit Scotland. But are you confident that the Council may have taken best legal advice and followed that through, given that there may be asserted that the Council may have erred on the legislation in terms of when the person actually knew that they had a claim, where there could be some 400 cases outstanding? That's my first point, and Chair, if we could come back after that.
I'll ask Head Legal.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure I'll be corrected by the accountants in the room, but this provision was for the outstanding claims that we had that had been in a tribunal. So that's all we're talking about here, and we're very confident that that provision is enough to complete those. The new claims that we've been told of, or that have come in letter form only. We've not had any employment tribunal claim forms as yet. Do relate to prescription. We have had legal advice on that, and I'm confident that that legal advice is correct.
Do you want to come back, William, and Irma?
No, I'm sure time will tell, and there'll likely be a civil case where it'll be legal argument that'll determine whether indeed we've got. I just wondered if Audit were aware of that, because it refers to 10 when the representation made by an MP, I hasten to add, refers to 400.
From our point of view, we were considering the position as at 31st of March 2015, and as at that date, those were the number of outstanding claims. I appreciate that will be, things may move and there may be things in the future, but from the point of view of the financial statements, that's the date that we need to consider.
You had a second point, Will?
Yeah, Chair, and turning to page 32, joint inspection of service for children, young people and families, and to the paragraph commencing, given the significance of the care inspector, it finds a following up visit took place in late 2014, and it's to the point where it says that the inspection team noted the gravity and the priority with which the partnership had responded in the first inspection of the resources that have been deployed to review the process and improve practice, given appropriate priority, strengthening responses to concerns about children's safety. You did mention that you looked at the governance of the joint board with health and obviously the council as a joint partner. Did you look at the practice in terms of the priorities of the cases, in terms of, let's say, under GIRFEC, where perhaps what is only being considered is the high priorities, where indeed there are other priorities where children are still at risk and may require indeed a lot more service under GIRFEC, notwithstanding GIRFEC does not come into effect at law until August 2016. But I just wondered if, where it refers to practice, was there any scrutiny of the practice in delivering the service to those who are at risk, whether it's a low, medium or high risk, by someone else's interpretation?
That wasn't something that would have been covered under our audit.
Alistair, you want to come in?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. And let me say before I go any further that I'm speaking as a councillor, no other capacity. That we go back to the point. Well, I'm delighted to hear that. That it was a long time ago. That equal pay, as far as I'm concerned, Chair, the important issue in the penultimate paragraph on page 18 is that due to the potential, it's the last sentence, due to the potential for future equal pay liabilities, this amount has been earmarked for such claims in the general fund. And as far as I'm concerned, it's politic to do so, sir. And I think that they are politic and prudent, and I think we should be well appreciate that, and not to say well satisfied with it. The other 2 points I would like to raise, sir. Page 32, we're talking about significant trading operations. Would have to say, on the face of it, somewhat disappointing to read that the council's roads maintenance STO, which is the only operation which meets the STO definition in this authority, hasn't achieved a surplus over the 3-year period, with a cumulative deficit of £400,000 as at 31st of March of this year. Any sort of further background or further information, Chair, as to why that should be the case, sir?
Obviously, as Chair of DG First, I've been kept informed of this, and in particular the issue is on the trunk roads and the trading benefit we actually get from that particular account. There is things in place to try and improve that situation. Obviously, there's discussions going on at a national level about corroboration with other councils and things like that, which may actually improve the situation. I can't be 100% sure on that, but I'm sure if you have a colleague in DG First this afternoon, which I'll be chairing again, then the director can be asked the appropriate questions.
If I may, sir, I appreciate that, to use the cricketing metaphor, it was a long hop and you dispatched it to the boundary. But the third one, as far as I'm concerned, sir, action point 2, page 34, we recommend to the council that the council consider borrowing and treasury management in council's report and assess its controls against recommendations raised within it. That came out, if my comprehension of the papers is correct, sir, in March of this year. Is there any, and it's not a criticism, it's merely a request, for information. Let me make that clear to you. Is there any reason why it has not been brought to the authority, or brought to the appropriate committee before now? And when, if not, when would be the projected timescale to develop action point 2, Chair? Thank you.
Paul, can you?
Yes, obviously that report did come out in March. We thoroughly reviewed the report at that stage and looked at the points that were made. We have made reference to the report in subsequent Treasury Management monitoring reports, which have come forward to committee, but it wasn't really a kind of formal review of the overall recommendations, which in discussion with the auditors we now feel it would be appropriate to bring forward to committee. We'll do that. I think we've actually mentioned in the action plan the date when that will be brought forward. January. I think it's January next year. We'll make sure it's a full report that comes forward to provide that detail to members.
Thanks for that, Chair. Appreciate it.
Could I maybe also just add?
Talk about the trading ops for DG First, if there's any issue you want to raise on that?
Just to add to what the Chair said, absolutely in line with that, but just in addition to that, the management within DG First have provided us with an action plan, which we've shared with the auditors in terms of how they will seek to recover from the deficit and make improvements in the current year. We're already seeing those improvements starting to come through this year. One of the measures is that there's been a number of staff who have applied for and received early retirement, and that's recently been approved through the pensions panel, which obviously have an impact on the running costs going forward. But there's other elements in that action plan as well, which we're taking forward to ensure that we avoid deficits going forward.
Okay. Anybody else? Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It's on page 18 where we're looking at the judgments and accounting estimates, where you make, you've got 5 points there. Should there maybe have been a 6th point where it's lender option, borrower options, and the council has the 10 million such outstanding debt, especially in the volatile financial climate that we're in at present, and also PFI?
I mean, just to reassure you on both counts, in terms of the PFI, that was an area that we considered as part of our audit. We looked at the PFI model, compared that to the prior year to look to see what adjustments had been made. And we've also reviewed that in detail in the past. So it was the fact that it wasn't one of those bullets doesn't mean it wasn't looked at. So we did look at that and there was no issues to raise. In terms of the lender options and the borrowings, again, it's not an area that necessarily from a reporting point of view involves great judgment. The value of the borrowings is the value of the borrowings, and we get independent confirmation of that. So therefore it wouldn't sit in there. But again, I can confirm that we have audited those numbers and that we've got nothing to report or concerns to raise.
Just for my own peace of mind, I suppose, am I right in saying, though, that this particular lender option, borrower option, it is open to the lender, in actual fact, calling it in as and when it so desires?
Will we come back again, Andrew?
It's just, as once again, it's really just collecting information on this particular issue. Am I right also then to say that my understanding is the borrower can in actual fact put whatever rate it wishes on the lender? Sorry, the lender can put, yes, the lender can put any interest rate it wants on the borrower's amount.
The lender has the option at these specific times to change the rate of the loan, but the borrower does not have to accept that change. They have the option to repay the loan at that time. So if they were to come along and come out with a silly rate, then we would just say no. We have the option to repay the loan and refinance it through other means.
Sorry to labour this, but that's the part that I'm worried about, is if they were to say, right, we're going to put 100% interest rate on that borrowing, that means then that the council's options are either to seek another lender or pay. And if that is the case, where does that leave the council in finding, say, £10 million?
I think that would be going into very specific details about lending and borrowing at the end of the day. I mean, I wouldn't imagine in that particular costing that 100% would be, accepted by the council. That would not be prudent of us as members to go forward with that. With regards to the accounts, however, I think perhaps if you talk to Andy outside of the committee with regards to that and get some of that information there, that might be useful. Yeah. Nobody else? Can we go to the recommendations then? Recommendation 2.1 is to receive the external auditor's account. We've done that. 2.2, note that no issues have been identified in the course of the audit which have impacted on the fairness of the financial statements submitted for audit. Agree? Note that updates, 2.3, note that updates on the actions identified will be presented to future audit and risk management committees. 2.4, note the update government statement that now includes all additional information on assurance regarding the Health and Social Care Integration Partnership. Note 2.5, note the audit accounts which will be certified by the Head of Finance and PwC after this meeting. And finally 2.6, note that the certified accounts and summarise it were made available to all members before the 31st of October 2015, when they will be available on the Council's website. Thank you very much. We go now to item 5. We move on to the Pension Fund report. Again, it's an unqualified opinion. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of the committee to thank Andrew Ure and his team for all their hard work in managing the pension fund. And I would invite Lindsay to take us through this report.
Just to clarify that the work on the pension scheme audit is undertaken by our pension specialists. I am not one of those pension specialists, so I'm speaking on their behalf. On page 167 of the papers, we have the executive summary, and the key things to note from that is clearly that the audit opinion will be unqualified, and that no matters have arisen which are required to be reported to the pension rate, and no matters have arisen which are required to be reported to the pensions regulator. In addition, we've not identified any material uncorrected misstatements in the accounts that need to be put before the pensions that require representation from the pensions subcommittee. In terms of independence and objectivity, again, on behalf of my colleague Martin Pitt, I can confirm that PwC is independent and therefore able to sign the audit opinion. In pages 168 and 169 of the documents, we set out our audit findings, highlighting some of the financial highlights and some of the movements year on year in the financial statements. So on page 168, we flagged that the increase in contributions has been driven primarily by an increase in the number of active members contributing during the course of the year. We've also flagged up our approach to this area with no matters arising to report to you. In terms of benefits, again, there's been an increase in benefits, and that has been a result of the pension increase of 2.7%, as well as an increase in the number of pensioners compared with the prior year. Again, we've flagged up our planned approach and with no matters arising from the work that has been undertaken. Again, investments, we have highlighted the work that we've done, and again, no issues to report back to you. Similarly to the report in the main council's accounts, on page 171, we've flagged up the significant risks that were identified in the plan and how we've addressed them, and again, nothing to note. And we've also flagged up or followed up on control recommendations raised from the prior year. The first one was in relation to late employer contributions from admitted bodies. There have still been instances of that during the year, but none of the delays were such that we felt there was a requirement to report that to the regulator. But we do think it's an area that the pension should remind admitted bodies of the timetable and the fact that there is a requirement to make the payments at that time. And then in terms of the final issue around membership numbers, we were comfortable with the work that had been done there, so consider that recommendation is now closed. Other than that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much. Paul, you want anything to add to that?
Nothing at this stage, Chair, just happy to answer questions.
Okay. Members? Andrew?
I noted that when we have international investment, we actually pay tax, and that becomes a part of the pension scheme. What I was wanting to know out of curiosity, and I know it may be nothing to do with the particular auditing that we're doing here, but that tax that we pay is obviously in a good year. When we have a bad year, can we set that tax against the bad year?
No, there's no option to do that, no.
Any other members? Okay, can we go to the recommendations then? 2.1, we've received the external audit report. 2.2, note that no issues have been identified in the course of the audit which have impacted on the fairness of the financial statements submitted for audit. 2.3, note the audit accounts which will be certified by Head of Finance and PwC after this meeting. And 2.4, note that certified accounts will be made available to all members before 31st October 2015 when they will be available on the Council's website. Okay, thanks for that. We'll go on to item 6 now, Dunmuir Park. This report concerns the work carried out by PwC looking at the transfer of land that enabled this facility to be built and the ongoing lease arrangements. I draw the committee's attention to a typing error at the top of page 257 of the paper. It says the lease has a monthly rental of 66,000. This should be the annual rental of 66,000. And I would ask Lindsay if she wants to add anything to that report.
This report, as I'm sure you're aware, is in response to a complaint that has been made to Audit Scotland around Dunmuir Park. The scope of our review was very much as set out on page 256 of the document. It was quite a narrow scope. It by no means covered all the points that have been raised by the complainant to Audit Scotland, but a number of those were completely out with our remit as external auditors. We worked with management to undertake the review, and we've given a summary of the findings there. And in terms of the typo that's been referred to, I can only apologise for that. That was absolutely my fault. I changed the draft version and got it wrong, so apologies for that. But happy to take any questions on the content.
Willie?
Could I ask a preliminary question, Chair, in terms of not so much of the audit, but the committee, as to what is our scope as an audit committee within this report? I know the purpose of it. I know it was to look at the land transaction and so forth, but what is our scope in terms of this audit committee? And to remain consistent, I've asked at Social Work that we set up a subcommittee to look at this, and this is some of the content of this is the very reason why I think it's important that we do have a subcommittee. And I just ask, because I would move that we take the contents of this report and feed this to or through to a subcommittee, and would so move, Chair.
One of you just answer it.
I think what you're looking at here today, Chair, and the committee is very much just as Lindsay has laid out from PwC. This is for you to be reassured by the work of PwC, what happened with the land transaction and in that aspect of the complaint. My understanding is that Social Work Committee is the committee that is dealing with the other aspects of Dunmuir Park, and that's where it's to remain for.
Willie, you want to come back in?
Appreciate what Rona has advised as the legal advisor, but again, I address it to yourself, Chair, and the committee as to what scope we have. There are issues in the report that gives me rise for concern in terms of where it refers to on page 256 in terms of the background, where and it's to the last bullet point. Sorry, the fourth bullet point down of that paragraph. The terms of the partnership agreement with DGHP should be negotiated through the Dunmuir Park Steering Group. This group was chaired by the Council and received representation from a wide range of key stakeholders. From that point on, then all decisions do not seem to have the hallmark of being consulted with the Dunmuir Park Steering Group. So in that respect, decisions that were taken, I would like to know, and hence my asking the question of scope, that this should be considered by a subcommittee, let it be of audit or social work or whoever, full council or whatever.
My understanding of this report is about the actual land transfer rather as the overall concerns that's been raised with Dunmuir Park, and that's been raised by Social Work Committee, and Social Work Committee are the scrutiny and the governance of that particular report. I'm of the opinion that should go until to Social Work Committee and make sure that the scrutiny and the governance actually takes place there of the Dunmuir Park residents' complaints. But this is one particular aspect of that complaint. I'm sure the contents of this will go to Social Work Committee as part of the overall response at looking at this particular issue, and big as it is, I'm not sure that the appropriate way would be for us to suggest a subcommittee to look at that. That would be, I think, on behalf of Social Work Committee to suggest that rather than here.
Can I just say, again, I hear what you're saying, but part of this is not just about the transaction, but it goes into the occupancy agreement and how 3 have still not signed, where there is questions over the occupancy agreement and their status of the residents and their representatives, their power of attorneys and so forth, in terms of their lifelong security So it does not just touch on the land transaction, it also goes into the occupancy and the agreement, and that was subject to, as the stakeholders, as the Dunmuir Park steering group. Hence my reason again, Chair, in terms of coming back to what scope have we got to say that this is, as you rightly say, only part of the overall issue, and have we got the scope to move, as I've done, for a steering group to look at the overall, and this as part of a component part of that whole investigation inquiry?
Obviously, you've asked the committee on that, and Ted, do you want to come in on it?
I think Councillor Scobie is revisiting something, that occurred at the last Social Work Committee meeting, where he did request a subcommittee. It was a decision of that committee that all members of social work should be involved in any investigation work regarding Dunmuir Park. So while I take the point that Councillor Scobie is making, I don't think it's within the remit of this committee to actually instruct another committee like social work to take that, to take an action to form a subcommittee. So I would certainly not support Councillor Scobie on this.
Also,
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. While I do appreciate the particularly narrow terms of the remit that was given to PricewaterhouseCoopers in relation to the work of this committee, and to the fact that it could be said that they have discharged that, in the report that's before us today, I am fully in sympathy with Councillor Scobie's comments, to the extent that I think there's an awful lot here which really needs further consideration and further scrutiny. And I would like to think, Chair, that you know me well enough, and you've heard me say often enough that primary responsibility for scrutiny, etc., tends to lie, or does lie, with the appropriate service or corporate committees in the first instance. And I do accept that social work obviously have a locus, but I personally feel that there are various issues here which, and not being disrespectful to members of the social work committee, let me make that clear to you, but I think they're of such importance that, in fact, the scrutiny should be at the appropriate time should be undertaken by the full council, because there's a whole raft of issues here that I personally, and I know that they're shared with my group, or by my group, that would want to see a light shone upon, sir. And for instance, without sort of taking leave of your indulgence today, but one of the basic questions I have is that why did the council in the first instance go down, or choose to go down, what by any stretch of the imagination was a somewhat convoluted process? And I think that that has to provide this facility, and I think that's the sort of thing that's got to be asked. There was a remit given by the Resources Committee at an appropriate stage in the process, to certain council officials. It was a remit with powers, Chair, to go on and enter into an agreement. What really, one of the ultimate questions, as far as I'm concerned, Chair, is what benefit really did the council get out of this, and was this the best vehicle, as it were, for the people living in the accommodation and for their families? And these are all issues, as far as I'm concerned, which I accept entirely, and I support entirely what you're saying. Really not for this committee today, but with the greatest of deference to the Social Work Committee, it's a bit like them being asked to review, their actions and all the rest of it. And I personally feel, sir, that this is of sufficient importance that this should go at the appropriate time to full council. And that there should be a detailed, process of scrutiny carried out in relation to all of these. So, to that extent, as I say, I'm grateful to you for allowing me to go on. But at the end of the day, while we note presumably the terms of the report today and the fact that PricewaterhouseCoopers have discharged the remit that were given, I would like to think that this committee would accept and would appreciate there's an awful lot more which still requires, in fact, to be considered and deliberated upon. And my view, sir, is that in the exceptional circumstances here, I personally feel on this occasion it should really be for full council. Thanks for your time, Chair.
Thanks very much. I mean, obviously there's still discussions going on at Social Work Committee for this particular issue, not this one on the report, but the whole issue of Dunmuir Park. perhaps an idea with the recommendations that we've been asked to note this particular thing and maybe to add to that, to take back to the Social Work Committee, that this report should be taken into consideration with a view for those members on that particular committee to ensure robust scrutiny and governance of that actual report. If members are happy with that, taking that forward, at least then there's an opportunity for Social Work Committee to take it forward to full council. I'm of the opinion perhaps it's a bit early yet, because there has not been full scrutiny of that Social Work Committee. And I understand what you're saying, that we have got a job to do as an Audit and Risk Committee, but I don't want to take away from the jobs of other members on Social Work Committee as well. Sir?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. On that basis, sir, I think that your recommendation is perfectly valid. I think it would be appropriate for this committee to put in the decision today the exhortation along the lines that you've just indicated, and I would be particularly pleased if at the appropriate time, if reference could be made, perhaps to involving full council at the appropriate time. As I've said earlier, Chair, I don't mean to be disrespectful to members of the Social Work Committee. I'm not trying to claw the remit back from them, but at the end of the day, I think it's important, given this part of the wider imbroglio, I think that it is just as you've said, and I would be well content to see an addendum to the recommendation for today's meeting along the lines that you have suggested. Thank you.
Andrew?
I wholeheartedly support what my colleagues just said, but in doing so, I'd also like to make sure that best value is evidenced. Within this report, I don't see evidencing of best value, and I think it would be extremely helpful if that could be included.
Lindsay, you got anything to say on that best value?
Apologies. We have flagged absolutely on page 258 that there wasn't a formal value for money assessment that was able to be provided to us to have a look at, but that management considered that value for money had been achieved, but that was all we were able to see.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I fully appreciate, but it would be really extremely helpful to know what all the options were at the time and whether if we did get best value. And as I say, it's not self-evident there. Not for myself, maybe I'm missing something.
Paul?
Yeah, happy to ensure that when the report comes forward to Social Work Committee, it reflects a fuller value for money assessment than members have seen so far. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll just go to the recommendation. Members are asked to note the comment on the external audit report, Dumfries and Galloway Council, Dunmuir Park, with the addition of the report to be taken to the Social Work Committee to give full scrutiny to Dunmuir Park and involve full council at appropriate time. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, and I did put down a motion on the table, but I'm quite happy to give way to the proposal on the lines that has been stated. But I think it should not as that. I think it should go to full council, and for full council to determine whether indeed it is satisfied. I am not trying to impose myself on social work. I'm referring to the remit and ask for the remit and scope of the audit committee, not for those to impose their interpretation of what they think I said in that respect. So what I'm saying is I'm quite happy to withdraw my motion on the strand, not as necessary, if necessary, but that it does, the recommendation from this committee is that we do ask that it goes to full council and there be proper scrutiny of this component part with reference to best value and the other component parts as well.
And as I said before, there's an ongoing discussion at social work, and of course they may bring in other issues that might want to be taken to full council. So the discussion, I think, will go on, should I say, and take that forward from there. And I think the recommendation actually covers that suggestion.
And I'm quite happy with that, Chair, that is the recommendation of this committee to full council. I would hope that members would accept that.
Okay, so are we happy with that recommendation? Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, can you tell me what the recommendation is?
Well, the recommendation is as written plus Report to be taken to Social Work Committee to give full scrutiny to Dunmuir Park and involve full council at appropriate time. And yeah. Yeah.
I don't see the need for the last three. I would prefer that this committee takes it to the full council in that recommendation.
Well, as I said before, there might be something that comes up with a discussion with Social Work Committee that they actually want to take to full council anyway. And we want to make sure that this goes to Social Work Committee as part of that scrutiny process and governance process. If something comes up other than that, then you don't want to be getting a full council report on just maybe one particular item. We want to make sure that everything's there. If it does go to full council, at the end of the day, it'll be social work.
Chair, there's enough emails flying about that could take the whole thing to full council.
Yeah, there's enough emails flying about that sometimes you get halfway through and you go, where did that start? Yeah.
Could I suggest that the social work, obviously, go through that, review the whole thing and send a recommendation to full council, and then if necessary, full council can discuss it. But at least it's open to them to discuss it. But decisions made by a social work committee in the first instance.
I mean, this report is basically about whether or not the council got best value out of the transaction. That's what it's about. It's being used here as a vehicle to actually direct social work in a different way. That's something I just could not support. I mean, even if the council didn't get best value out of that particular transaction, what we have to actually consider is who would be the beneficiary of that. And the beneficiary would be, of course, the people of Dumfries and Galloway. So I actually don't see the relevance of a lot of these motions and, recommendations to social work. I'm happy with the suggestion that you first made, and, I would support that. But to actually use this committee as a vehicle to instruct a service committee to put something back to full council isn't something I believe we should be doing.
Alistair?
With the greatest respect to Councillor Thompson, sir, we've not taken a decision, to instruct a service committee. We've no locus, we've no power to do that. What we're saying is, in fact, that there are various other issues here, which, the blunt fact of the matter, Chair, from the report that's before me today, is that I don't know whether or not the council got best value out of this, what I've already said, what I personally feel was a somewhat convoluted process to provide this facility. I think it's right and proper, in fact, that we do satisfy ourselves that that's the case. As I've already said, I don't want, on the basis of your submission, Chair, with which I changed my tack and lined up totally in support with you. I think at the end of the day, we've got to accept that social work have a locus, have a role to conduct their own scrutiny. But having done so, it's a bit like, sort of me doing something and someone challenging it and me carrying out, sort of the scrutiny and the investigation. Come on, let's look, Chair, at bringing in full council as necessary and as appropriate. Because there are issues here. I'm not trying, as it were, to open up anything. All I'm saying is that, I feel that what we're doing today is as far as we can go. There are a whole raft of other issues. You've been helpful. You've indicated that the service committee are still involved in this process. All I'm saying is that, and you covered it admirably in what you suggested, and I used the term earlier of an exhortation. That's not an instruction. An exhortation is something totally different, Chair, and I'm well content with what you suggested. And as I said, I changed my tack on the back of that, and I'll support you totally in that.
So, the recommendation is members are asked to note and comment on external audit report Dumfries and Galloway Council Dunmuir Park, with the addition of report to be taken to Social Work Committee to give full scrutiny to Dunmuir Park and involve full council at appropriate time, insofar as necessary. Insofar as necessary. Are we happy with that? Thank you. I have no further business. Thank you very much for attending.
10:30. In the absence of a chairman and vice chairman, can I call for nominations of chairman